Hey everyone, I'm Raquel, and you're listening to the Avenue podcast. In this series, we're exploring the many layers of relationships through the story of Joseph. We hope his story inspires you to grow in the way you relate with all the people that God has put in your life.
All right. Hi, Eunice.
Hey, Sam.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's a bit chilly.
It is very chilly here. Yeah. Hopefully the lights warm us up.
Yeah.
So, question before we start.
Mm-hmm.
What is the trait that you've picked up from your family that you sort of want to change?
I think I place a lot of sentimental value in things.
What? That's not a bad trait.
Oh.
I think that's really nice.
Coming from a family of hoarders, it's not a very nice thing.
Okay, fair enough.
It's also the thing that I don't think that I actually hoard. Not clinically or anything, but every time I want to keep something, my sister will start shaming me for it. She'll be like, "Oh, look, you're collecting rubbish again," which is really annoying.
Yeah.
Because then now I feel guilty keeping anything.
Yeah.
But get this, when she has clothes that she doesn't want to throw away because they're still kind of in good condition, but she doesn't wear them anymore, she'll give it to me. And then she'll say that I'm a hoarder. So
you get the hand-me-downs.
generational.
And the guilt.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. What about you?
I think mine's very... I think pride. Yeah, my family... So my mom is very strong, independent, and my dad is very strong and independent, and they clash from time to time. But yeah, I think that's me as well, growing up in a generation where it's yay, feminism, women can be above their husbands. And so I think that is something that I've learned not to be, even though I can see it in my family. Generations from aunties and stuff, Filipinos were very loud, opinionated. That's what I want to change.
That's really interesting because it's not only in your family, but it's also a cultural thing as well. That's very interesting. Well, that kind of links into our topic for the day, which is generational sins. Is it generational sins or generational curses? Yeah,
generational sins.
Yeah.
Should we read Genesis 37?
Yep, that is our passage.
I think there's...
It's quite long.
36 verses.
Why don't I go till 18 and then you can go.
Yeah.
All right. I am reading from the NIV version. So Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I'm going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to him, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with their flocks, and bring word back to me." Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks?" "They have moved on from here," the man answered. "I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. Do you want to continue?
Yep. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty, there was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal,
Alright, I could probably go back a verse before,
Yep.
and then we'll keep going.
and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty, there was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. The camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?" Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it to see whether it's your son's robe." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. So, long one.
Yeah. So there's a lot that happens there that it's very messy. It's hard to imagine brothers doing that to each other. But yeah, so the topic of the day is generational sin. And I guess for a little bit of context, there's a lot of favoritism happening in this family, and it kind of goes back a couple generations. Like the family history has always been messy. And yeah, we're kind of coming to a climax event within the family history of the favorite son being sold, almost killed and sold. And not to spoil it, but I guess another bit of context is that after this, Joseph goes into captivity and he ends up rising in the ranks, and when a famine hit later on, he was able to provide for his family because he had worked his way up in the government. Yeah.
All right. So we're going through the lineage of Joseph, how Abraham had that tension with Isaac and Ishmael, and Isaac loving Esau, and Rebekah, the mother, loving Jacob more. And then now we go on Jacob loving Joseph more than his older brothers.
Yeah.
And that sort of generational cycle is seen throughout that lineage. And it's hard. When you see it, it's hard to break that curse coming from the past. And I think with the older brothers, they really saw how everyone was treated. Being older, you see everything.
Yeah.
And I guess Joseph, just being the youngest, not being aware of all these things, so he's just very innocent, living his life. But yeah, there's one thing that I read. It says, what one generation excuses, the next normalizes, and the next may weaponize. And so hearing this and what you just said before spoiling everything, the story, I'm glad that Joseph didn't weaponize his trauma, the abuse that he, encountered and experienced.
Yeah, like he didn't perpetuate the favoritism or perpetuate the generational sin by retaliating against his brothers. And it's very interesting because in this case, this family, it's favoritism, but in other families, it could be heaps of other things. It can be failed marriages. It can be cold, unloving relationships between parents and children. And we see that in time and time again, that cycle just keeps going because children never learnt, for example, what it feels like to have a good relationship with their father. And so for boys, they're not going to know what to do when they have kids. And that just is very hard to break out of. You're absolutely correct. And sometimes, we live in a generation where it's quite easy to, because we're very aware of the patterns that have come before us, and it's very easy for us to feel powerless, like we're the victims of all that have come before us. So what can we do now? And in this case, we can kind of see Joseph, like you said, people can weaponize the generational sin that's in their family. And Joseph was kind of on track to kind of being like that a little bit. When you're the favorite child, and it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because no matter what you do, your siblings just say, oh, you just get away with it because you're the favorite child.
Yeah.
You're getting praised because you're the favorite child. So it's easy to then go, well, yeah, I am the favorite child. If I have a dream that tells me that you all kind of bow down to me, and that's the truth, right? He did have the dream. I'm going to tell you about it.
Yeah.
Why not? It's kind of my right. But of course, that when those are your brothers and you already knew that there's a bit of tension there, why would you go and tell them that?
Why would you stir up the pot?
Exactly. And so we can very much be the perpetuators of these generational sins that have been put onto us. And so we have an opportunity to break apart.
Yeah.
To break that cycle.
Yeah. And I love that you say that because a lot of the times we villainize the older brothers thinking that, well, it's just right that we do because they did plot to kill their brother. However, with that, it's hard for me to believe that it was just that easy to decide to kill their brother. I feel as though there was so much trauma and hurt that was unchecked in the hearts of the parents, and the older brothers have adapted and they weren't able to heal because hurt people.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm the eldest in my family, so just speaking from experience, when there are times when my family doesn't openly communicate things and we don't address certain issues and they just shove it to the side because he's the younger brother, you're the older sister, you're being sort of forced into just accepting what's been put there without it being acknowledged, you sort of build that resentment. And I know that as an older sister. But as a Christian, I've sort of learned, being with Jesus, to let that go, let that pride go, be humble. And instead of me, lashing out to my brother, I was loving him even more because he is the younger brother. I want to bring favor to his life. But for me, it's really hard to understand this because as the older brother, they were hating on Joseph, maybe because he was being really annoying as well. But for me, it's like I'm more mad at my parents for their treatment towards us, that they can't see that there's this animosity and they're causing that division more than me hating my brother.
Yeah.
Because it's not his fault that he's the favorite. It's my parents' treatment towards the whole situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then looking back at the parent kind of generation, like in the story, the reason why there are so many brothers is because the father took many wives. Yeah. And the reason why he had children with so many different women was because his wives were fighting and they were competing and they wanted to have, they were saying to him, come and marry my servant so that you can have more kids kind of under my name. And it's just this very toxic kind of competitive spirit that's been there all along.
Yeah.
And we can see that passed down. And in a way, Joseph's brothers were doomed, kind of.
Yeah.
Their relationship was certainly doomed from the beginning. And it's very easy to villainize, but hurt people, like you said,
It's definitely generational resentment rather than just plain old sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
And them killing Joseph or plotting to kill him is like all that resentment just falling over that big pot.
Yeah.
Like it's overflowing.
Yeah.
And so them hearing Joseph, obviously Joseph's the younger brother, and in that time as well, older brothers are meant to have the favor. So like, why are you skipping the line, Joseph?
Yeah.
Like
Skip many.
you're actually not. And even Joseph, like all the older brothers, they were working really hard in the land, where Joseph stayed close to home and was telling everyone about, like telling the parents of what the older brothers did.
Like tattling on them.
Little. And so it was very hard for them to accept that. Like, why are you having the favor even though you don't deserve it, whereas we're being mistreated this way, although we've worked really hard for it? It's not because you worked hard for it, it's because they just prefer you more than us. And so I could sort of empathize as to what led to their decision making, although it's not justified. And that is why we need Christ. Because we're so broken, and I've at some point have, as an older sister, have been prideful, and I can totally relate to that. But thank God for Jesus and his grace that I didn't get to that point where I hated my brother. I didn't get to that point where I hated my parents for whatever animosity there is as siblings. But that's why it's really important to be close and aligned to Jesus.
Yeah. And on that, let's look at the story and see where God is, Where did God kind of step in and do something? So he gave the dreams to Joseph, which is very interesting because these dreams, man, they stir the pot.
Yeah.
And of course, Joseph probably could have delivered the news more tactfully or even not told them about it because he didn't have to. But, I think God gave him these dreams to show him, like, spoil the end of the story for him, because what he goes through afterwards is so traumatic. Almost being killed by your own brothers, then being sold into slavery, then being, so close to people that are very high up in this kingdom, this foreign kingdom to him, but, completely at the mercy of foreigners. That is all very traumatic stuff. And God showed him this dream beforehand, potentially so that he could endure and he could know that there is a promise there. But also, God showed him how he eventually would deliver his family from danger and from starvation. And he couldn't understand it at the time, reasonably. But it's just very interesting to see God move in that way and show that the thing that might cause you to have animosity with your family in this generation, which is this idea that Joseph is in the center and everyone is around him, God can flip that and turn this trauma into deliverance and into something that helps Joseph grow and helps deliver his family out of danger. Yeah, so it's really interesting.
Yeah. And what Joseph didn't realize when God gave him that dream, it wasn't to make him feel like, oh, God is going to bring me up, rise me up, I'm going to be the best of the best, I'm going to rule over everyone. He didn't realize that it wasn't about his glory and, him being the person that's going to rule everyone. It was about restoration. Yeah. It wasn't about the position that God was going to put him in. It literally was about the future that he still couldn't understand and accept.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I think it was definitely prophetic, like you said. There's years of suffering from Joseph, years of humiliation, and suddenly he's standing before Pharaoh and he's interpreting dreams. and he is the second in command in Egypt. And he couldn't see that power or in that dream as of yet because he needed to go through that wilderness. I think if Joseph didn't go through the process in Egypt where he had to learn to serve, learn to wait, learn to lead, he wouldn't be the leader that could forgive his brothers in the end.
Absolutely. And an interesting point as we move towards the end of the story is that Joseph is still human. When he was reunited with his family, he actually tested them. He checked that they weren't treating his little brother the way that they treated him. And I found that really interesting because I guess growing up when I would hear the story, I kind of thought, oh yeah, that's the normal thing to do. Like, of course you would do that. But then came this idea of, shouldn't forgiveness be unconditional? And wouldn't Christ want us to forgive people regardless of how they responded, whether they had repented or whatever? And it just really struck me that you can forgive someone fully as a human being, but and you have Christ's help to help you forgive them and see that they're only acting out of, they don't have a relationship with Jesus, and that's why they're like that. We're human. But at the end of the day, we are still people that have been hurt.
Yeah.
And it would be quite unusual for you to completely forget about everything and just for this family dynamic to be normal again. That's actually not normal. That's unnatural. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. Like, speaking from personal experience, I've always, as the older sister, I've always been forced to just forgive and be humble. Or like, no one forced me. I've just had to force myself to do it because that's just the responsibility of the older sister, that you just have to let it go. But I guess throughout the times when I've become more aware of healing and restoration and true peace, some things need to take time and some things need to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And I think Joseph, speaking about asking, whether are they doing the same things to his little brother, that was him truly making sure that that same hurt and trauma that he's been through isn't happening again. Because even though you forgive the person, it doesn't mean that they've changed.
Yeah.
And you have to also make sure where you're going to set your boundaries and where you're going to set the dynamics moving forward after forgiveness.
Yeah.
And that's really important, because if you're just going to forgive and not think about what the next steps are, there isn't going to be healing.
Absolutely.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't really forgive his brothers, he could have just put them in jail. He could have let them starve. He could have done all of that, but he didn't. But you're right. Like, after he has forgiven them for their wrongdoings to him, moving forward, you got to set things right and make sure that things are going in a healthy path. And that's how you break the generational cycle of sin and of hatred and resentment.
And speaking of like breaking the cycles as we end, for me, it was a really comforting story that, Jesus triumphs, his character triumphs over people that love him. Because if it was just Joseph, I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't have been able to do it on his own, But his brothers come back, they're vulnerable, they're desperate. And instead of doing the things that his lineage did, Abraham and Jacob did, he opened his arms to his people. He forgave, he didn't manipulate, he didn't retaliate, he didn't dominate, he forgave them, he covered them, he fed them. And what's really hard as humans is we can't choose that. But with Jesus, we can choose grace and we can choose ending generational war. Yeah. And we can say, this cycle ends with us.
Thanks for listening to the Avenue podcast in our series on relationships. We believe conversations around scriptures help us in the way we relate with God and those around us. My name is Raquel, and if you want to learn more about our community, you can get in touch with us through the handle @Avenue Mission on social media platforms.